How chaotic is Norse mythology, really? In the year 1219, in Norway, there was a skald named Snorri. He was telling the local people stories from Norse mythology. And when he started talking about Odin's romantic life, someone in the crowd suddenly raised a question. "Mr. Snorri, you just said Odin was unfortunate, right?" Snorri said, "Yes, Odin was unfortunate because he became the ruler of the gods." Snorri said, "Yes, Odin was unfortunate because he married the goddess of family, and then unfortunately also got involved with the earth goddess, the goddess of magic, and the goddess of snow and ice." Snorri said, "Yes, and also the 3 goddesses of fate, the 9 daughters of Aegir, plus a bunch of unnamed giantesses and human princesses." Snorri said, "Yes." The man paused for a moment and asked, "Then I have just one question. In what way exactly was he unfortunate?" Snorri said, "Now that is the right question. Odin's relationships with all these beautiful women were, in fact, born out of necessity. And the reason behind that necessity was the central event of the entire Norse mythological world, Ragnarök." So Snorri began to tell the story. At the beginning of Norse mythology, the world was also in a classic state of chaos, and from this chaos, 3 beings were born one after another. They were Ymir, the frost giant, Surt, the fire giant, and Buri, the first god. Between the gods who represented order and the giants who represented chaos, there once broke out a massive war. In the end, under the leadership of the 3rd-generation god king Odin, the gods defeated the giants and drove them to the edge of the world. After that, Odin used the body of the frost giant Ymir to create the entire world. Then he captured the descendants of the fire giant Surt and made them pull the sun and the moon across the sky, but here was the problem. Although the gods had temporarily defeated the giants would one day return. According to prophecy, the day they returned would be the day the divine world was overturned. That day would be Ragnarök. So what could Odin do? He had to prepare in advance. In order to obtain more accurate prophecies, he first married Frigg, the goddess of family and prophecy, but Frigg refused to reveal too much. So Odin then went to Frigg's maidservant, Fulla, trying to get information out of her through indirect questioning. But Fulla did not give him much useful information either. So Odin went to Saga, the goddess of history, but Saga's information was not accurate enough. So he then went to Grid, a giantess known for her wisdom. After receiving prophecies that were not exactly precise, Odin began to follow them strictly anyway. For example, Odin discovered that the child born between him and Jorth, the earth goddess, might be able to prevent Ragnarök. So he had a child with Jorth. That child was Thor, the god of thunder. Later, Odin discovered that this prophecy might not be completely accurate. Perhaps the one who could stop Ragnarök would be the child born between him and Jorth, the earth goddess, might be able to prevent Ragnarök. So he had a child with Jorth. That child was Thor, the god of thunder. Later, Odin discovered that this prophecy might not be completely accurate. Perhaps the one who could stop Ragnarök would be the child born between him and the giantess Render. So Odin had another child with Render. That child was Vali, the god of nature and vengeance. Of course, this was still not entirely accurate, and so later there were also the 3 goddesses of fate, the 9 daughters of Aegir, several witches, and a few unnamed mortal women. Of course, besides gathering prophecies and producing potential saviors, Odin also tried to win over the giant race. For example, he and Loki, who came from the giants, swore a blood oath to each other and became blood brothers. Later, Odin gradually realized something. Depending on prophecy was really not as reliable as depending on himself. So he came up with Plan B, build a giant wall. But there was another problem. The gods did not know anything about construction. So how were they supposed to build this wall? At that exact moment, a mysterious stranger appeared. The stranger said that as long as he was given half a year, he could build a perfect wall. Odin asked, "What payment do you want?" The stranger said, "I want the moon." The gods heard this and looked extremely reluctant. Then the stranger said, "I also want the sun." The gods heard this and looked somewhat unwilling, but they could still consider it. Then the stranger continued, "And I want Freyja." The gods immediately rejected him. "Absolutely not. If we lose Freyja, we lose our joy." So who exactly was Freyja? She was no ordinary goddess. Let us take a simple look at her relationship chart. Freyja was the goddess of love and beauty in Norse mythology. She had a brother named Freyr and Freyja were siblings, but they were also lovers. At the same time, they each had their own partners. Does that sound messy? Because it is. And according to Loki, if you fully expanded Freyja's relationship history, it might involve almost the entire Norse pantheon. And not just the gods. For example, one time, Freyja saw a golden necklace made by 4 dwarves. She wanted it badly. So in order to obtain that necklace, Freyja slept with each of the 4 dwarves. Now let us return to the story. Just as the gods were about to reject the stranger, Loki stepped forward. He said, "We can agree to your conditions. But we also have one small condition. On the day the wall is supposed to be completed, if there is even one single brick not in place, then you will receive no payment at all." So how exactly did Loki, the god of trickery, stop the stranger? Some people might say, get him drunk before the deadline. Others might say, secretly steal 1 brick, Snorri said. Those are the ideas of ordinary people. But clearly, Loki was not an ordinary person. And this was not an ordinary mythology. Snorri explained that this mysterious stranger had a magical horse. This horse could work day and night, carrying stones and bricks 24 hours a day without resting. There were only 3 days left before the wall would be completed. So what could they do? Loki transformed himself into a beautiful mare. Then he went out and seduced the stranger's horse. The 2 horses ran off together, played together, and mated for 3 days and 3 nights. Because of this, the stranger failed to complete the wall and did not receive his payment. And Loki also gave birth to a child from that horse. That child was Sleipnir. Sleipnir was an 8-legged magical horse and later became Odin's personal mount. Loki had a wife, he also had a lover, and besides the horse we just mentioned, Loki may also have had relationships with Odin's wife Frigg, perhaps even with Odin himself, that went far beyond friendship. And of course, Freyja was probably involved too. But compared with Loki's relationships, what was even more outrageous was Loki's children. Besides the 8-legged horse, Loki's children also included Fenrir the monstrous wolf, Jormungandr the world serpent, and Hel, the goddess of death. These 3 were all exiled by Odin, because Odin learned through prophecy that they might all become the causes of Ragnarök. At first, Odin placed his hope of preventing Ragnarök on Thor, the god of thunder. Thor's mounts were 2 goats. These 2 goats had the power to die and come back to life, so every time Thor traveled, he took these 2 goats with him. During the day, he used the goats to pull his chariot. At night, he killed the goats and ate them. The next morning, he resurrected them again. Thor's weapon was called Mjolnir. It was recognized as the most powerful treasure in the divine world. So how did this treasure come into existence? The story goes like this. One day, Loki had nothing better to do. So he wandered into the chamber of the goddess Sif. Sif was Thor's wife. When Loki saw that Sif was sleeping, he suddenly had a wicked idea. He quietly walked over to her, lifted her blanket, adjusted her body, and then shaved her head completely bald. When Thor came back and saw his bald wife, he flew into a rage. To calm Thor down, Loki went to the dwarves and tricked them into making several treasures. These included Thor's hammer, Odin's eternal spear, and a newly crafted magical wig for Sif. When the giants learned that Thor now had a hammer specially made to fight giants, they planned to steal it, and they actually stole Mjolnir. So Thor found Loki and told him to negotiate with the giants and see what it would take to get the hammer back. Loki asked the giants, "What will it take for you to return the hammer?" The giant chief Thrym said, "What a joke. That hammer is a weapon specifically made to fight giants. Why would we ever return it? Unless you let Freyja marry me." When this news returned to Asgard, the gods held an intense debate over one question. Did they want safety? Or did they want happiness? In the end, it was Loki who came up with a plan. He said, "We can have Thor pretend to be the bride." And so, Thor put on a white wedding dress and wore Freyja's necklace. With Loki acting as the bridesmaid, the 2 of them went together to the land of the giants. At the wedding feast, Thor ate an entire ox in one sitting. Then he drank 3 barrels of beer. After he finally got Mjolnir back, he wiped out the entire giant cave. Later, Thor learned about Ragnarök. He also learned that he and Jormungandr, the world serpent, were destined to have a final battle. Thor thought, if this is a destined battle, then why do we have to wait until Ragnarök? So he called over a friend named Hymir and asked him to row a boat so they could go find the world serpent. Out at sea, Thor used the head of an ox as bait and actually fished up Jormungandr. The moment Thor saw Jormungandr, he immediately raised his hammer and prepared to strike. But just as Thor lifted the hammer, his friend quickly cut the fishing line. Thor was furious and shouted, "Do you think I can't kill Jormungandr?" Hymir replied, "Have you considered the fact that neither of us can swim? Have you considered where we are supposed to go if the boat flips over?" After witnessing Thor's series of actions, Odin realized a very serious problem. Some of the prophecies he had received seemed to contain small errors. So what could he do? Fortunately, he still had a backup option. That backup option was Baldur, the son of Odin and the queen of the gods. Baldur was the god of light. As long as light remained, twilight would not descend. To protect this backup option, Frigg made all things in the world swear an oath. She demanded that they promise never to harm Baldur, but she overlooked one thing: a plant called mistletoe. Mistletoe does not grow directly from the earth. It lives as a parasite on other trees. After receiving this protection, Baldur immediately became a little too confident. He began playing a game with the gods that was basically, "Shoot me if you can." The gods soon discovered that every weapon thrown at Baldur would either automatically turn away or fall harmlessly to the ground. While the gods were cheering, Loki placed a piece of mistletoe into the hand of Baldur's twin brother, Hod. Hod was the god of darkness. He was also blind, so after receiving the mistletoe, he did not think much about it. He simply threw it. And with that one throw, Baldur was killed. When Odin learned what had happened, he immediately activated Plan C. He made another prophecy. This prophecy said that the child born between him and the giantess Reindr might be able to prevent Ragnarök, or at the very least, he might become the god who avenged Baldur. So Odin forcibly had a child with the giantess Reindr. That child was the god Vali. Vali was indeed different from ordinary gods. On the very day he was born, he grew into an adult. Odin saw this and thought, maybe this prophecy is finally working. But before Odin could even react, his son Vali directly killed his other son, Hoder. So this prophecy was hard to judge.
You could not exactly say it was right, but you also could not exactly say it was wrong. At this point, Odin finally understood. He realized the truth that fate could not be changed, and he completely gave up trying to stop Ragnarök. From this, we can see that Norse mythology carries a very strong sense of fatalism, but when we look at the ending, this fatalism also feels somewhat forced. At one banquet, Loki completely exposed the gods' dirty secrets. He cursed Odin for liking to disguise himself as a woman. He said Odin's wife Frigg had a very questionable private life. He called Freyja the public bus of the divine world. And he also said that Thor's wife Sif had once had a very intimate relationship with him. Because of this, the furious gods imprisoned Loki, and he remained imprisoned until Ragnarök after Baldur's death. The world lost its light. The world tree began to collapse. The army of giants invaded the world of the gods. At the very beginning of the war, Odin was swallowed by the monstrous wolf Fenrir. In the end, Fenrir was killed by one of Odin's sons. Thor killed Jormungandr, the world serpent, but he himself was also killed by the serpent's venom. Heimdall, the guardian of the Rainbow Bridge, cut off Loki's head with a sword. But unexpectedly, after Loki's head fell to the ground, it bounced back up. And somehow, that bouncing head killed Heimdall. Finally, the fire giant Surtur used his flames to set the entire world tree on fire. And he himself, along with all of his followers, was also swallowed by the flames. The fire giant was burned to death by fire. Heimdall was killed by a flying head. This is clearly what you would call forced fatalism. So here comes the final question. In the version of Norse mythology told by Snorri, why did he have to create such a strong sense of forced fate? Because before Snorri, as the faith in God spread and developed, the Christian God gradually replaced the old belief in Odin. In order to make room for the Christian creation myth, the old gods had to be written out of the story. In other words, they had to die. And that is why in this version of Norse mythology, the original gods were written toward their destined destruction. That is all for today. I'm Yuki. See you next time.